What is going on, everyone? Today we are going to be ranking every single Call of Duty campaign character of all time, or at least most of them. This is pretty much every single main character that has ever appeared in a campaign for Call of Duty, alongside some other side characters as well. There's some characters here that are not that important, but if I forgot someone, chances are they're probably not that big of a character anyways, so it's probably not a big deal. This is of course all the campaigns from Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare all the way up to the most recent Black Ops 6. There's a lot of characters to go through. I think we have almost 200 characters on this tier list to go through, and we're going to rank them on this tier list. It's going to be a fun time. Just to go over some of my criteria for ranking a character, I do not rank characters based on whether or not they are a good or bad person. I think that is a very boring way to rank characters. It is purely based on how well written they are, how entertaining are they, how good is the storylines involving those characters. I'm basically just ranking it on the actual character itself. So villains are definitely able to go in S tier, and people who are really, good and morally righteous could definitely be down in F tier. It really just depends. But of course, this is all my own personal opinion. I would love to hear some of your thoughts in the comment section down below. Let's get into this. So since we are going in release order for these games, we are starting off with Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare, and we're going to start off with John Price. And obviously everyone calls him Captain Price. No one actually calls him John, but that's his full name technically. He's easily one of the most iconic characters in the entire Call of Duty franchise, and he definitely deserves to be in the S tier. Like, there's no doubt about it. I don't even have to think about it for a second. This character is so iconic, and he has so many interesting storylines, especially in Modern Warfare 2 and 3. I love what they do with him there. I love how he gets captured and put into the Gulag prison, and you have to rescue him. He actually isn't in a lot of the early parts of the Modern Warfare 2 campaign. You actually only get to him like halfway through it, and then he just becomes absolutely just so focused on his goals to the point where he will sometimes even put himself in danger, which is always really interesting to watch. And I think he's definitely at his best in Modern Warfare 3. Of course, after, spoiler alert, when Soap dies, there is going to be tons of spoilers in this video. If you haven't played the campaigns, maybe you shouldn't watch the video, or at least don't watch certain parts of the video of the campaigns you haven't seen. But when Soap dies, he just becomes just absolutely hell-bent on killing Makarov. And of course, he almost kills Yuri because of what Soap said about Makarov knowing Yuri. So all that stuff was so great. In COD 4, I don't think he's that fantastic. He still is very iconic there, but I don't think he becomes an S tier character until MW2 and then MW3. And this is the original version of Price. We are not talking about the rebooted version. We'll talk about the rebooted version of Price later on, but for the original version, easily going in S tier. I love this character. I love the design of him, the voice acting. All of it is incredible. There is literally no complaints I have for this character. Next up, we have Gaz, which honestly, I don't have much to say about Gaz from COD 4. He really isn't that interesting of a character. They never really go too in depth with him. Of course, he does die by the end of the COD 4 campaign. Zakhaev kills him, and I just don't really care about him too much. I'm going to put him in C tier. I know some people might disagree with that, but it's just how I feel. I don't think he was ever that interesting. I think he was quite generic. And like I said, we will talk about the rebooted version of Gaz later in the video. Soap from the original Modern Warfare trilogy is a character that's quite interesting because he is the main character for a lot of it. Well, the main playable character for the entirety, or at least most of COD 4. And then of course, also you get to play as him a little bit later on as well in some other missions, but he is obviously a very iconic character as well. He's got a very iconic look to him. One of my favorite things about him is that when Modern Warfare 2 starts, they actually don't tell you that that is Soap. Now, I honestly don't remember if that's it's obvious that it's Soap or not, because every time I went back to it, obviously I knew that was Soap, but I just don't remember if the first time I played it, did I actually not realize that was Soap? I actually don't think I did. I played this game for the first time in 2009, so it's hard for me to memorize that, but I do like that they don't actually present him as Soap. They just call him Captain McTavish. But Soap is obviously going in S tier as well. This character is so great. His death is one of the most iconic moments in gaming history. That is, just undisputed. But everything with him in MW2 as well, he is fantastic. I love his brotherly love that he has with Price. It is such a amazing friendship you get to see progress throughout these games that I think is really great. So one of the things that I feel like the rebooted trilogy, the recent rebooted Modern Warfare trilogy has kind of missed out on, I feel like they haven't really done much with Price and Soap together. I don't really feel that too much, so definitely prefer those characters and I absolutely love them in those games. Next up, we have Nikolai. Now, Nikolai is like the pilot. He just kind of flies a helicopter. He's not really in much of the campaigns, to be honest. You're really just talking to him over the radio most of the time. So I really don't think I could say much other than he obviously does some cool things, but like I gotta put him in C. I don't really think there's much to his character beyond just being the pilot, but he is definitely there for you a lot, so you gotta give him some respect there. We also have Macmillan, and I don't know why I included Macmillan. He's only in like 2 missions. He's in the flashback missions with Price. He is Scottish, which I think was cool because it was nice to have someone with a Scottish accent, and for that he's pretty cool, but they don't really do a lot with his character beyond that. But I think even just with that one mission, he was cool enough for me to put him in C tier. There are very iconic missions, All Gilead Up and the one shot one kill missions. They're really, really iconic, and so yeah, Macmillan he's pretty cool, definitely pretty cool. So now we have some of the villains from COD 4. Of course, we have Imran Zakhaev and we have Viktor Zakhaev as well as Al-Assad. So I'm probably gonna put Imran Zakhaev in the B tier, but yeah, I'll put him in B tier. So Imran Zakhaev does technically show up as a rebooted version in Black Ops Cold War, but that is not the same version of this Imran Zakhaev. I did not include the rebooted version of Imran Zakhaev on the list because he's not really a big character in the campaigns. Also gotta make it clear, I'm talking about the campaign versions of these characters, because the other Zakhaev, they do a little bit with him in the zombie storyline. I'm not including the zombie storyline additions to these characters, which again, we'll talk about that later. This is specifically for campaigns. We'll do a zombies character ranking another day. But Viktor Zakhaev, I'd probably put in C tier. I don't really think he had a lot to do. Didn't really care too much for him. But Imran definitely had more of a power to him, so it was he's a little more threatening. Obviously, he was the Russian arms dealer and chairman of the ultranationalists of Russia. He's one of the chairmen of the ultranationalists of Russia, obviously working with people like Makarov. And so, yeah, definitely a cool villain nonetheless. And then obviously Al-Assad was the military commander and warlord in the Middle East, and obviously worked with Zakhaev and Makarov. So I would probably put him in C, maybe even D tier. No, I feel like C tier is gonna probably have a lot of characters, because I feel like C tier is like the I don't really care that much tier, but they're not like bad characters necessarily. Like I wouldn't say there's anything too wrong with them and how they were written. I just personally don't find them to be that interesting, but they're there and they're fine. And now we're moving on to World at War, which has a couple characters, nothing too crazy, because honestly World at War wasn't too focused on the characters. It was more so focused on just giving you a World War II experience, and the characters were not a big focus of it. But we do have Dmitry, which Dmitry was the main playable character for the Russian European theater side of the game, and you don't really get to see him at all, except for in Black Ops 1, there's a flashback mission, and you actually do get to see him for like a second. I'm going to put Dmitry probably in B tier, because I don't know, I think him and the character we're going to talk about next, they have an interesting bond within World of War that I actually really, really like, and there's something so interesting about it that I have to put him in B tier for that. And then we go to Viktor Reznov, easy S tier. I might even say top of S, because Gary Oldman's acting is incredible as Viktor Reznov, like insane. Some of the best voice acting in gaming history, in my opinion. No, I can't put him above Price, I just can't, but I'm gonna put him in between Price and Soap. Viktor Reznov is amazing. So obviously he's in World of War and he's in Black Ops 1. Now in Black Ops 1, he's only in a small portion of it as, you know, Viktor Reznov in Vorkuta, but he actually doesn't make it out of Vorkuta. But he is in the rest of the campaign as visions and hallucinations of Alex Mason. So he is technically there in his presence, but he's not actually there as the character. But regardless, even just in World of War, Viktor Reznov is amazing, like one of the best characters ever. And I just would love to see more storylines with Viktor Reznov in the future. Obviously, it would have to be a game that takes place between the 50s and 60s, because otherwise you wouldn't, you know, he dies after that. He's not alive anymore after that. Some people theorize that he's still alive, but I don't believe he's still alive. I guess we technically don't ever see him die, so I guess that's what makes people think he might not be dead. But regardless, Reznov is iconic. He looks awesome. He is what makes World at War a good campaign. Honestly, without Reznov in World at War's campaign, I don't think that campaign would be nearly as good. So next up, we have some of the characters from the US Marines that were in the Pacific Theater part of the campaign: Private Miller, Polonsky, and Roebuck. Now, I mean, some people are going to say they love these characters and they're iconic and all these things. Look, they're fine, but I just don't really care too much. And I just personally don't like silent protagonists that don't really add much to the story. And I feel like Private Miller was one of those for me, so I'm going to put him in D tier. And you might say, oh, well, that's kind of, you know, hypocritical because Soap was technically a silent protagonist in the first game, but like he wasn't later on, so that's why he became a better character. And then same with Dimitri. Dimitri obviously was silent, but I feel like they did more with him and Rezanov and their relation with each other and just the conversations they had with each other that to me added more to Dimitri's character, which I don't really feel that ever happened with Miller. Miller wasn't having any deep philosophical conversations with other characters in the US Marines, so couldn't really put them much higher. But I do think the other characters in the Marines, Polonsky and Roebuck, were pretty cool. Roebuck was actually voiced by Kiefer Sutherland, by the way. He does a pretty good job with the voice acting, so I got to give him credit there. Now this is what is considered the villain of World at War, but honestly I don't remember this character like at all. But apparently the name is Heinrich Amsel. Is German officer, architect of Stalingrad's misery. So I mean, he was there apparently, but the fact that I don't even remember him and I don't remember his role in the campaign, I can't put him that high. The fact that you're that unmemorable as a character maybe even deserves F tier if I genuinely don't remember this character's appearance. I don't know. But he's labeled as the main villain of the campaign, so that's why I'm thinking like, well, I might as well put him because it's the only villain I have to put for this. But I feel like World at War missed that though. I feel like they should have had a villain that had more of a presence to him. I know it's not really the point of World at War II, obviously but like I think it would have helped the campaign a little bit. I'm gonna put him in D actually. Let's not throw him in F. Maybe it's okay that there wasn't a big main villain, but just the fact that I don't memorize him whatsoever, he deserves to go in D. And now we're getting to Modern Warfare 2, which is when some of the characters started getting a lot better. Like there are some really awesome characters here. First of all, starting off with Simon Ghost Riley, or his code name is Ghost and his full name is Simon Riley. I'm gonna put him in A. Some people would probably put him in S, I know, but I just personally don't think he deserves S tier, but he's close to it. He is a really cool character. His design is really cool. His voice is really cool. His death was really iconic, really huge. So you got to give him credit there. He's only in Modern Warfare 2. He's not really in a lot of the games, but he is obviously a character that I think is pretty cool. I just don't really think he has that deep of a character though, so it's hard to rank him much higher than that. But his overall look itself is cool enough for me to put him there for sure. And next, unfortunately, I'm gonna have to put Roach kind of low. I know Roach goes along with Ghost with that iconic death, which is why I'm not going to put him in D, but I'm going to put him in C. And this is what Roach apparently looks like. I don't even, you play as him, so you don't really get to see him too much, but I don't really care too much for Roach. I don't know. That's just how it is. And then next we got Joseph Allen, another character that you don't get to really see because you're playing as him. Gonna put him in C tier. Joseph Allen is actually the one that goes undercover for the No Russian mission, and then you get killed by the end of the mission. You only play as him in like the first few missions, but of course not really that big of a character. We also have James Ramirez, which is the other character you play as in the later parts of the campaign as with the US Army Rangers. Now I don't know if this actually is meant to be James Ramirez or not, but when I looked up James Ramirez online, the like iconic MW2 poster image came up, so I'm pretty sure this is meant to be Ramirez on that poster. If it isn't, oh well, we're just gonna call it Ramirez for now. But that's where Ramirez is gonna go in C tier, because again, silent protagonists, I just don't find them to be that interesting unless they actually have a deep story to them. James Ramirez did not have that, but obviously there were some iconic moments with Sergeant Foley yelling Ramirez, which, speaking of Sergeant Foley, we are going to be ranking him next. I mean, his voice is so iconic. I want to put him in B, but I just can't do it. I just can't. I'm putting him in C. I'll put him a little bit higher than some of these characters though, but he was cool. I definitely like that part of the campaign, but none of the characters did I really feel attached to in a way that truly like mattered for the game, so I'm just gonna have to put him there. Next we have General Shepard, one of the most interesting villains ever made for a Call of Duty game. And I mean, he was a villain that obviously was an unexpected villain because the game starts off with him as being a part of the good guys, right? He's an officer in the US Army, and his Marines were actually the ones that were killed during the nuclear bomb in COD 4, and that's pretty much the character's motivation. He wants revenge for that in a lot of ways, but he also wants to be a war hero in a lot of ways. So part of his goals were actually orchestrating World War II, and he actually was helping Makarov in a sense to make World War III happen. Did I say World War II before? I might have said World War II before. I meant to say World War III, but he was part of what orchestrated World War III, and that is such an interesting role for a character because he's part of the US Army, and he's wanting this big war to happen. It's insane. Very different motivations than characters like Makarov, but their main like common denominator motivation was just wanting World War III to happen. So he obviously is part of that. But I'm gonna have to put him in S tier because that is a very iconic role for a villain. And I might even put him higher than Soap, to be honest. He is such a great villain and is easily one of the best characters in the OG Modern Warfare trilogy. But is he the best villain in the OG Modern Warfare trilogy? No, because Vladimir Makarov is the best character in that OG trilogy. I absolutely love what they did with Vladimir Makarov in Modern Warfare 3 or the original, not the new one. Again, rebooted ones we'll talk about later. But this original version of Makarov, he's obviously the leader of the Russian ultranationalists. He wanted to bring full-scale war between US and Russia to basically restore the Soviet Union. That was his goal. And I think a lot of what the character says, a lot of his dialogue is really, really, really interesting to listen to. And the voice acting is so good. So you got to give him credit there. But just like Shepard, he has an iconic death scene as well that just absolutely love that fight between him and Price on top of the hotel. That was just such a great moment. And this character, he's like so interesting because he's not just the villain in MW3, he's also there in MW2, and he was kind of retroactively added to be a part of the COD 4 story as well. And the fact that he's been there the whole time and he's always been involved, but he doesn't become the main villain until MW3 is just so interesting. So you gotta just say he is a fantastic villain. And I know we're still talking about MW2 here, but because he is introduced there, that's why I'm including him now. But yeah, he's obviously much more interesting once MW3 comes around. Now we're on to Black Ops 1, and we have Alex Mason, of course, a CIA operative who gets brainwashed by the Russians. Yeah, one of the most iconic main protagonists. This is the first time where I felt like the protagonists were starting to become really interesting, well, as in like the playable protagonists, because it's the first one that actually like had a lot to him. Obviously, you know, like I said, Soap didn't really get that storyline until later when he wasn't the playable character anymore. So Alex Mason, I'm gonna put him in S tier. I don't know, I'm not sure where though. Probably above. No, honestly, probably even I don't know. There's a lot of heavy hitter characters up here, but I think he's gonna go right around here, maybe even above Shepard. I think Alex Mason is fantastic. Just the fact that he went through all that horrible shit with getting brainwashed, and then, you know, Hudson was trying to break the information out of him to try to figure everything out, what he's learned from the Russians when he was there. And it's just so interesting how they managed to do all that. And then he's in a little bit of Black Ops 2, has a very iconic death, or, you know, obviously depending on your choices, he could have lived, but that's not canon, so technically it doesn't really matter. And then he's in a little bit of Black Ops Cold War, but he doesn't really do a lot in it, to be honest. So mainly my love for this character comes from Black Ops 1 and that little bit of Black Ops 2. But yeah, he's so iconic. And then speaking of iconic, Frank motherfucking Woods, probably top of S. I think this man deserves top of S. James C. Burns does such a fantastic job with his character. Unfortunately, they did replace the voice actor with someone new for Black Ops Cold War and Black Ops 6. And, you know, the guy does a great job, whoever does the new version of him, but it's just not the same. I feel like it doesn't hit the same as James C. Burns. Of course, Alex Mason was actually done by, I think, Sam Worthington. I want to make sure I got that name right. Yeah, Sam Worthington. He's really great. He's obviously, he's the guy in Avatar and a lot of other great movies, but I absolutely love Frank Woods and what they do with this character. He is such a badass, but he's also funny. He's also just like really interesting too, like what he does and what he goes through, especially in Black Ops 2, which is kind of interesting because he obviously is really great in Black Ops 1, but Black Ops 2 he's almost even better because they have this whole storyline with him where he basically was fooled to shoot his own, you know, best friend Alex Mason, and he does it, well, at least in the canon he does it, and that messes him up quite a bit, especially because he then becomes basically the father to David Mason, Alex Mason's son. He basically takes care of him after that. So there's a lot of just interesting stuff that they do with that character. And I love the scenes when he's a bit older and in a wheelchair in Black Ops 2 and you're talking with him as David Mason. So all that stuff is so great. Frank Woods is definitely one of my favorite characters. Just like David, I feel like they didn't do a lot, just like Alex. I always get David and Alex mixed up. Just like Alex, they didn't do a lot with him in Black Ops Cold War, unfortunately. Black Ops 6, they do a little bit more with Frank Woods, but just not enough, I feel like. I really want this character to get more of a spotlight, but I feel like ever since the new Black Ops games, they don't really use him much. They just kind of use him for nostalgia, I feel like, which is unfortunate. But I love Frank Woods. Probably will always be one of my favorite COD campaign characters. Next up, we got Jason Hudson, which is probably a good spot for A tier. I don't think he's like an amazing character that deserves S tier, but he's definitely up there as one of the better ones. He's had a lot to do in the Black Ops games, to be honest. And actually, I think they gave him a decent role in Black Ops Cold War. He probably had a better role to play than Frank and Alex did, to be honest. But I just really liked him, especially in Black Ops 2, when you actually get to see his death scene. One of the most brutal death scenes in a COD campaign. Like, that scene was just, oh my goodness, that was heartbreaking to watch. But he is really iconic. He has a cool look to him. He has a cool vibe to him. So yeah, definitely like this character quite a lot. Next up, we have Gregory Weaver, which, like I said, for when I was talking about the zombie stuff before, this is solely based on how they are in the campaign. How they are in zombies does not matter right now. When I do the zombies ranking later on, we'll talk about how Weaver is in the zombie storyline. But as this version of him in the campaign where he's not, dealing with zombies yet, I'm just going to give him probably C tier. I mean, he's probably a little higher in the C tier just because he looks pretty cool with the eye patch and everything. But and he lost his eye from Kravchenko. So I think they did some cool stuff with him there. But there's not much about him, so I can't really rate him that high, but he is cool nonetheless. We also have Joseph Bowman, who was actually voiced by Ice Cube, by the way. I'm gonna put him in B tier. I like Bowman quite a bit. They had a couple of really good moments with him. He had a brutal death as well. So many brutal deaths in COD campaigns when you really think about it, but he's awesome, so I'll put him in B tier. We also put Sergey on here, which is the dude from Vorkuta. I don't know why I even put him in the ranking because he's not much of a character, but he looks badass, so I'm putting him in C tier just because he looks badass. Next up, we got the villains from Black Ops 1. We got Nikita Dragovich. Now, honestly, I think Dragovich is one of the weakest villains we've ever had, to be honest, because he has a really good presence to him, but like I just don't think he's that interesting regardless. No, one of the weakest villains is maybe too strong of a term. I think just for the OG games, because the OG games usually had some really good villains, I'd probably just put him in like low B tier. He's definitely still a good villain, but like, no, I would say he's an average villain. Nah, maybe I should put him top of C. Yeah, because we're gonna get some really insanely good characters later on. I don't think I could put him much higher than that, to be honest. Kravchenko is probably going to go along with it. No, I feel so wrong putting him. He was decent. I'll put him there. I'll put him and Kravchenko there as well. Steiner can go here, and then Daniel Clark can probably go here as well. Probably down there. Yeah, so just to go over these villains, I mean, obviously, Dragovich, Kravchenko, Steiner, those are like the three men that like Mason really wants to kill because they're the ones involved in the brainwashing and everything like that. Dragovich is the creator of Project Nova, which was the whole Nova 6 weaponization that they were doing, and also the numbers program that brainwashed Mason into becoming a sleeper agent. Kravchenko is his second in command, and of course he had that whole allyship with Raul Menendez in Black Ops 2 because he was actually in some of Black Ops 2, which was interesting. Steiner is the scientist. He was an ex-Nazi and created Nova 6. So a lot of interesting stuff there. Daniel Clark, I believe, was kind of like working with Frederick Steiner. So you get to interrogate him in one of the missions. But yeah, I like these characters. They're totally fine, but I don't really think I have much to say about them beyond the fact that I think they could have been a little bit more of characters, but still pretty good for what they are. So now we're on to Modern Warfare 3, and we have Yuri, which Yuri is such an interesting silent protagonist, playable character. I keep calling them protagonists, but they're really just playable characters. Most of the main characters are protagonists, but regardless, Yuri is a character that he could have easily been boring, but what they decide to do with him is really, really cool, where they give us that twist where he actually was working with Makarov at some point in the past, but was basically betrayed and had this whole thing that happened with him and he changed sides. I really, really like what they do with this character at the end there. The showing that he was actually there at No Russian, but he was just like almost killed by Makarov and somehow survived. That was so like so Yuri is gonna probably go, I want to say top of A, to be honest. I don't think he's S tier material, but he's close. Like this man is this like inches away from S tier, and obviously he dies at the end of MW3. So one of the better playable characters we've ever had in a COD campaign. So definitely deserves the A tier. And next we have some of the characters from Delta Force, and there's not a lot of characters here because there's a lot of characters in Delta Force, but I only included a couple of them. Obviously the playable character is Frost, which, I mean, Frost, like I said, you don't know anything about him. I can't rank him that high if you don't know anything about him. Sandman and Truck, though, you know a little more just because you get to actually hear them and see them and see them do things. They have cool death scenes, so I'll give them that. I'll put them maybe like behind. Yeah, I'll put them over here. I like the death scenes for the characters, I will say. Sergeant Foley is going to go above them, but yeah, no, pretty cool. I would put them in C tier. C tier is going to be a lot of just like meh characters, you know, that I don't really think there's anything wrong with them necessarily. I just don't really find them that interesting. And the last character for MW3 is going to be Volk, which Volk is obviously a supporting villain, not the main one. The main one is Vladimir Makarov, which we've already ranked because he was in MW2. But Volk doesn't really do too much, so I'm unfortunately not going to rank him very high, probably around here. C tier seems fine to me. I just, yeah, don't really have much to say about Volk. Now we are finally onto Black Ops 2, which is of course one of my favorite COD campaigns of all time. And we have David Mason. I'm gonna have to give David Mason the S tier, right? Maybe. Oh, I don't know. It's close. Do I want to have that many people in S tier though? I kind of do. Probably bottom in S tier, but David Mason is awesome. He's one of the best playable characters we've ever had in a COD campaign for sure. Definitely follows well with his father's footsteps, and I really hope to see him return in a future campaign, hopefully next year's campaign, which is supposed to be set in 2035, I believe, 10 years after Black Ops 2. I think David Mason returning as the playable character would be really, really cool, but he's great here. Obviously he is hell-bent on taking down Menendez, and he's the commander of the US Navy SEALs at this point, and there's obviously a lot of interesting futuristic gadgets that he gets to use throughout this campaign, and I think he is awesome, especially the scenes where he's talking to Woods and just kind of learning about the past, whether it's involving Menendez or involving his father, and learning more about his father and learning more about the things he did, because obviously his father died when he was very, very young. And I think that attachment that Menendez has to him, where he wants him to suffer, like, it's such an interesting thing to have for this character that he's lived with his entire life, just knowing that he was there for his father's death and just doesn't really remember it because he was so out of it when that happened. So really like this character, really love him as a playable character. He definitely deserves S tier. Next we have Mike Harper, played by the wonderful Michael Rooker, incredible actor, and I'm gonna have to put Mike Harper probably in the A tier. I want to say he's on the similar level to, yeah, I'll put him top A. I would say he's similar to someone like Hudson, where he's just a really nice side character that is pretty cool, pretty awesome. Doesn't really have a lot to him though. He's just really badass. So deserves A tier for that, at least in my opinion. We have Admiral Briggs, which, I mean, rest in peace to Tony Todd. He was actually the one who voice acted for Admiral Briggs, and he recently passed away, and he was fantastic. I think this is probably one of the more interesting, like, Admiral characters in Call of Duty's history. Obviously, they've had a lot of characters like this who are like the higher ups that aren't actually involved in the fighting itself. They're just kind of sitting behind a desk, but Admiral Briggs was pretty cool, so I'm probably going to give him B tier, top of B. Seems like a pretty good place for him, I would say. And then we have Chloe Lynch, or also known as Karma. She was obviously the one who created the Silurium worm that basically was used to like hack into the technology, and eventually they assume that she's this weapon, but she's actually just a person, and she gets involved in everything and didn't expect to get involved in everything. I'm gonna put her in B tier. She's pretty cool. Like, she actually has a decent like character to her. Like, Black Ops 2, I feel like is where a lot of the characters were starting to get a lot more development than they used to, and I think that worked really well, especially for a character like her, who normally in other campaigns probably wouldn't have had much to her, but they did a lot with her in that campaign. We have Jonas Savimbi here. I'm gonna put him in C tier just because he's awesome, but like, I mean, he's only in that one mission. He's actually a real person too, which is interesting. They used a real person, an Angolian political leader, I believe. So I'm gonna put him just right over here. Totally fine, but nothing too crazy with the character. Then we have Javier Salazar, which of course, he is a member of the Navy SEALs, but he also is working with Raul Menendez basically as a double agent. So I like that character. My issue with the whole twist is that they kind of just fly over it and don't really pay much attention to it. Like, they don't do anything with it, and I didn't like that. So even though I enjoyed the character's presence, I feel like the twist kind of came out of nowhere, and they didn't really have much for a reason behind it other than just to have the twist. You know, it was a twist for the sake of the twist, if that makes any sense. So I'm gonna put him in C tier because of that. I want to put him higher, I really do, but like if you just have a twist for the sake of it, I can't give you much credit. There really wasn't much purpose to it. Manuel Noriega, also based on a real character. I'm gonna put him in C tier as well. Didn't really have much of an interest in the character, but he is actually based on a real person, so I guess that adds a little bit more like realism to the campaign, which I thought was interesting. DeFalco is another villain that I just don't think was that interesting. I'm probably just gonna put him a bit lower on this ranking, probably even all the way down here, but he's there. He exists, so that, you know, he just exists. And then the absolute best villain of all time in any Call of Duty campaign is, of course, Raul Menendez, the Nicaraguan drug lord and leader of terrorist organization Cordis DA. So I'm gonna put him probably, I want to even put him at number 1. Like, I love this character. I think he's so interesting, but is he number 1 though? Like, that's high. I want to do it, man. I'm gonna do it. He's such a good character. He's so interesting. He launches this big attack, the whole attack campaign against the US, and which leads to actual attacks in retaliation for the CIA getting his sister killed, which was, you know, a mission they actually show us. Like, the fact that they show us a flashback mission to show when this character became a full-on villain and just was just out to get the US. That's insane that they show us all that, and they go so in depth with this character. They show so much of him. They have so many scenes with him. There's even scenes where you're working as someone undercover as part of his organization. His death scene is amazing. Well, of course, there's, you know, different endings, but if you do get his death scene, it's insane. And the acting is incredible. Like, the character itself, the fact that he's so hell-bent on revenge is such a core part of who he is, and it makes him very, very interesting. His dialogue is very, very great. So easily gonna go in S tier for me. There's like no competition almost when it comes to villains. I mean, Vladimir Makarov and Shepard are great, don't get me wrong, but how can you beat fucking Menendez? Like, I don't know how you can. You can't, because he's that iconic, he's that amazing, and you will probably never see a villain as good as him again in a COD campaign.
Your life will be consumed by absolute loss. Then and only then will you understand what you have done to me. I will not kill you, boy. You will suffer with me. And then one day, you will see this pendant again. And you will remember everything you saw and felt tonight.
So now we're on to Call of Duty Ghosts, and we have a couple characters here that honestly, I just don't care too much for. A lot of the characters in this campaign, I just don't. Starting off with Logan Walker, one of the most boring playable characters ever. I'm putting him in D tier. We know nothing about him, and again, the fact that he's a playable character to me tells me that I want more of him. I want more to do with him, and the fact that he doesn't have much to him is a problem. Whereas a character like Sergey, for example, he's not the playable character, he's not the main character, so he's not necessarily supposed to have all that story to him, so it's okay, and I'm more likely to put him higher on the ranking because of that. But because Logan is meant to be this bigger character and just doesn't have much to him, I have to put him lower. I just don't think he's good whatsoever. Hesh, I think, is fine, but I think there's a lot of moments where I just can't get into this character. I really, really can't. He's incredibly generic. I'll put him in C tier though, at the very least, maybe like around here. That's fine. Elias Walker, again, just like, I just don't care too much for the Ghosts characters. Then you have, I think this one is Ajax or Keegan. Well, this one's Keegan, this one's Ajax. Ajax dies pretty early on, so I'm probably just gonna put him bottom of C. Keegan, also don't really care too much for. He is voiced by Brian Bloom, who also voices another character in Call of Duty, which we'll talk about later, but just really don't think I'm going to put him that much higher. Now, Merrick is the only Ghost character I actually like quite a bit. I think Merrick actually was pretty damn cool. He was the commander of the Ghosts, pretty much, and so I'm going to put him probably top of C, but not much higher than that. I don't like the Ghost characters. Just how it is. I don't know. Riley, though, I don't know why I included Riley, because obviously not really a character. It's just, you know, but Riley is such a fun like role to play in the story that I wanted to include. I wanted to include Riley. You know, it just made sense. So I think B tier sounds good, right? Maybe top of C, because again, not much of a character, but I like dogs, so yeah, especially in Call of Duty, you know. So maybe we were putting Riley in higher than that, but respect to the dog. You gotta give the dog respect. Rourke is the main villain in Call of Duty Ghosts, and if you've seen my rankings, you know I don't like this villain. I think it's a very lazy villain. It's a villain that's just simply full of, you know, brainwashed, essentially. So he was brainwashed by the Federation to just basically hunt down his former teammates because, of course, he was part of the Ghosts. So yeah, okay, there is something you could have done with that character that would have been interesting, but I personally don't think those interesting things were done. So because of that, I kind of want to put him in F tier, but I'm just going to put him in D tier because I don't think he deserves to go that low. But because he's the main villain of the campaign and I just don't think he's well written at all, I'm just going to have to put him in D, unfortunately. Next up, we have Advanced Warfare, and Advanced Warfare starting off with Jack Mitchell. Not that great of a protagonist, but definitely better than some of the other ones. I'm going to put him probably top of C. Someone could convince me to put him higher, but I think B is good. I actually think the other characters in Advanced Warfare are better, actually. So let's get to those characters. Not William Irons, though. William Irons doesn't really do much. Probably just going to throw him somewhere over here. But Gideon and Iona, or Ilona, I forget how you pronounce her name, but both of them are going to go B. I actually like these characters quite a bit. I think they're a lot more enjoyable than Mitchell, a lot more interesting than Mitchell. And then, of course, we have Cormac, which I also think he deserves B tier. Like, you had some solid side characters in AW, I will say. But Mitchell, surprisingly, is just, in my opinion, the least enjoyable out of all of them. And then you have Joker, which, like, he doesn't really do much, so can't really put him much higher than like a C tier, I guess. But I don't know. I liked some of these characters that definitely were better than the Ghost characters for sure, so they definitely deserve to be there. As for the villains, we have Hades, who was the leader of the KVA terrorist organization, a really badass like villain, I will say. So I think that alone deserves to put him bottom of B tier. But as for Jonathan Irons, I think he's a good villain, but he's not great. I do think there was some elements of him that felt a little bit contrived, but I will say, you know, Kevin Spacey obviously gives a pretty good performance here. I'm gonna put him in B tier, probably the top of B. I think he did his job well. I just don't think he was like a fantastic villain or anything. Basically, the whole motivation of this character is that he would allow attacks to basically happen to improve Atlas's reputation by showing how useful their technology is. He's basically using the technology against these attacks that happen by different terrorist organizations. And he, like I said, allows it and even encourages it to happen. He is the CEO of Atlas, so obviously he wants it to be a successful company, but going those lengths is what makes him the villain. So definitely an interesting villain, but I wouldn't say like some of the stuff they do with him later on in the campaign, I just didn't think worked fully for me. Most of it, though, was pretty solid. And now we are at Black Ops 3, one of the weirdest campaigns of all time. I actually have a lot of BO3 characters to go through. There's a lot of BO3 characters. First of all, we have Player. Yes, the name is Player. They didn't even give the main protagonist of BO3 an actual name. Instead, they just called them Player, and then you just choose the player. You choose what they look like. This is like the default skin, I believe, for Player. You could choose different skins for him, though, or her, depending on what gender you want for the character. F tier. I've been talking about how much I hate silent playable characters. I want them to actually be, you know, an actual character with story to them, but Player is like the opposite of that, and they don't do anything interesting with it either. I know there's the whole thing with, oh, is he or isn't he Taylor later on, and I don't know, it's obviously very confusing. It's meant to be confusing, but I just don't think it worked for me. I don't think any of that worked for me. Just, you could have done the same story, but just made the main character an actual character, like with an actual name and just a specific design to them, a specific look, rather than just randomly choosing a skin and going with it. I get what they were going for. I just personally was not a fan. And then we have Jacob Hendricks. Not much of the characters from this campaign are going to be ranked that high, to be honest. They're not that interesting. It's BO3's campaign. It wasn't that well written. Therefore, yes, there was a lot of weaker characters there. And then, of course, we also have Rachel Kane. Had a really brutal death scene, but Rachel Kane is not going to be ranked that high for me personally. John Taylor, I think, was definitely more interesting just because there was more like depth to the character, I guess you could say. So I'm actually going to put him maybe even B tier, surprisingly. That might be shocking to some people, but I'm going to do it. Fuck it. I don't care. Like, I think there definitely was more to this character that I could at least be a little more interested in.
Train go boom.
We have Sebastian Diaz. I mean, C tier. Like, I just don't care. Sarah Hall, though. I like Sarah Hall. She was an intelligence expert for Taylor's team, and she was voiced by Kate Sackhoff, who was a really great actress. She actually was, she plays Bo-Katan in The Mandalorian and the Clone Wars show, and I'm probably going to put her in B tier, actually. I say she's probably the best character from Black Ops 3, which is, again, like kind of shocking to say because there's not a lot of great characters in it. I might even put her like almost top of B, like that. It's crazy to say that, but yeah, straight up, she deserves to be that high. This character, Zeta Khalil or something, I don't know. It was a member of the Egyptian army. He was a character, so I included him, but I don't care too much. You have Dr. Yusuf Salim, who was an Egyptian scientist, one of the main perpetrators of what happened with the Coalescence Corporation, doing the illegal experiments on humans. A little more interesting, I will say, but still not that interesting. And then you also have Sebastian Kruger, which was he was the chief executive of the Coalescence Corporation. So basically the main villain of Black Ops 3, which goes along with Corvus, which I'm including Corvus as a character, which might be weird. I guess Corvus is not really like a human character, but we also have some other non-human characters here as well, like Riley. So I said, fuck it, let's include Corvus. Not the most interesting villain in the world, but I do like the idea of it, the idea of this virus basically going through the DNI system that they set up. So I think Corvus deserves to be somewhere in C tier, probably next to Sebastian Kruger, because Sebastian Kruger was basically the one who created Corvus and everything that happened with it, so it makes sense to include them together. These two villains were shortly in BO3's campaign. I believe Go Min and Go Zulon. She was in a lot more of the campaign, so I'll probably put her just a little bit higher, maybe like next to DeFalco. Probably bottom of the list, actually. But he was literally in like 2 seconds, so I don't know. You could have done more with both of them, I think, and maybe they would have been better villains, but do we really need them? I don't know. BO3's campaign, again, was just kind of a mess all around. I think we can all agree on that, so none of the characters are really going to be that high. I think Sarah Hall and John Taylor are definitely the highest on the list for me personally, so no one's an A or S, though. We haven't had an S or A tier character since Black Ops 2. I would say the run of Ghost's Advanced Warfare in BO3 was probably the weakest run of campaigns we've ever seen for a Call of Duty. Thankfully, we haven't had a bad run like that since, so things are going a little bit better now. But that was a pretty bad run for campaigns, I will say. But then out of nowhere comes one of, or in my opinion, the best campaign of all time, which of course was Infinite Warfare. Now, I would go as far as to say Infinite Warfare actually has the best characters in the franchise. So get ready for this. Some hot takes incoming. First things first, the main character, the playable character, the main protagonist of Infinite Warfare, Nick Reyes. He's the captain of the UNSA Retribution. I'm putting him in the S tier at the top of the list. I'm not kidding. I swear, I am not joking. This is not a lie. This is not me messing around. Nick Reyes is the best character in the Call of Duty franchise. He's my favorite character in the Call of Duty franchise. I think this character embodies what it is to be a perfect protagonist, where perfect in terms of the character and how the character is written, but he embodies it because he has so much depth in pretty much every single moment of the campaign. Everything he says, everything he does speaks like loud words to what this character means to the story, what his character means to the campaign. And what he's all about is basically, it kind of reminds me of a lot of protagonists, like the best protagonists of all time, like Woody from Toy Story, for example. Really weird analogy, but he does remind me of Woody a lot. And he's basically all about wanting to lead his team as much as he can. He wants to get the job done, but he's not willing to leave people behind. He's not the kind of guy to leave people behind, even if that means sometimes getting them into even more trouble. He always tries to find another way. He always tries to find the better way. And that obviously is a bit of a flaw for him, because it ends up leading to some characters dying, because he's just unable to accept that they need to sometimes just let people die in order to save others, or for the greater good, or whatever it may be. And he doesn't realize that fully until the final mission, where he decides that the only way they're going to successfully take down the SDF is if a lot of them don't go home. Like, that's basically what he decides in the end. He realizes that's the only way they can do it, which is what leads to pretty much their entire fleet except for 4 people dying, and leads to one of the most emotional moments in a COD campaign, the fact that they succeeded the mission but only 4 of them survived. It's like such a fantastic story arc for Nick Reyes. I can't help but love him. Obviously, Brian Bloom does a fantastic job with the voice acting, and yeah, easy S tier. Don't even have to think about it. Easily. But But then we get Nora Salter, another fantastic character. I'm probably gonna put her, shit, we're going S tier, man. I'm gonna put her at bottom of S though. I don't think she deserves to be higher than someone like David Mason. But Nora Salter is incredible as well. I think her interactions with Nick Reyes are amazing. I think they have a lot of depth to them. I think there's a lot of depth to this character. And I would absolutely love an Infinite Warfare 2 where she's the main character. I think that would be really, really cool. She's great. She's awesome. She deserves S. I'm sorry, she just does. And then of course we have Ethan, another character that deserves the S tier. I don't know where. I might put him above Soap even, to be. No, I'm putting him above Shepard. I might put him above Mason. No, I can't do that. I'm sorry, Ethan. But Ethan is great. He is hilarious. He has heart to him. His death is emotional. Just, oh my God, because we don't have any other storyline like this in Call of Duty. This is the first time where we had a non-human character as like a talking character that was actually a big part of the story. Well, other than I guess Corvus, but whatever, you know what I mean. Like just the fact that he's a main character, main playable, not playable, but I guess technically playable for one mission. But he's a main protagonist character who is very human in a lot of ways. Like he has morality to him. I mean, he gets really close with Nick. He even saves his life and feels emotions almost. And you get to kind of learn what it means to be human in a lot of ways. Even though he wasn't human, he still acted very human. And I like that brotherly relationship he grows with Nick throughout the campaign. And so yeah, gotta put him in S tier. Like it would be a big mistake to not put him in S tier. Next we have Yusuf Omar. Omar is so cool. I'm putting him in A tier. Bottom of A though. I wouldn't say he deserves top of A or anything like that, but Omar is great. His death was really sad, to be honest, but I mean, most of the characters' deaths in Infinite Warfare were very sad. There's a lot of just great moments there, but I really love Omar. He's really, really cool. We have Admiral Rains. I would say alongside Admiral Briggs, he's probably the second best, like, behind the desk character in a Call of Duty campaign. I'm going to put him in B tier, probably. I'll put him right next to Admiral Briggs, to be honest, because he's pretty cool. He's pretty awesome. He has a lot of good dialogue, good cut scenes, good moments with him, so definitely deserves to be quite high. We have Gator, probably B tier, bottom B, sounds good. Griffin deserves B tier as well. Kashima, I really like Kashima. I think he's really funny. I think he has a lot of good moments, and his death is probably one of the best moments in the campaign. So I think Kashima deserves B tier, but probably towards the top even. Well, I'll probably Reigns a little bit lower, probably below Zakaev, but I think Kashima deserves pretty high up there in the B tier. And then we get Brooks, which I would say Brooks is the weakest of the Infinite Warfare characters, but still pretty cool. Oh, I forgot about Marine. Marine doesn't do a lot, so I'll probably put her even a little lower in C tier, but she's fine. She's fine. Then we have the villains. First of all, we have Akil Min Raya. Now, Akil is actually played by a really solid actor who's also in Red Dead Redemption 2, and I believe he also plays a character in Black Ops 6, funny enough, but we don't have that character on this list because it wasn't that big of a character. But he works, of course, he's an SDF commander, and he hijacks Earth's planetary defense system, turning it on the Sado fleet. So if you don't remember that second mission where basically like their own fleet attacks themselves, because he was actually working there as an undercover SDF commander. So yeah, pretty interesting villain. They don't do a lot with him though, so I'm gonna put him bottom of B, but I do definitely think he deserves some credit. And this is gonna be a hot take, very hot take, but we have Salen Koch here, played by the wonderful Kit Harington. He does an absolutely amazing job in this role. He's, of course, the admiral of the SDF. His goal is to eradicate Earth's authority and break their power. And basically, the whole SDF, their whole thing is that they seceded from Earth's influence during the Secession Wars. And basically, they just want to get rid of Earth. They want to get rid of Earth's ability to get powerful. Some people don't like this villain. They think he's a really poorly written villain. They don't think he's interesting. But I don't really agree with those takes. I think he's definitely underused. I don't think they use him enough. But when you also really think about it, the campaign itself is not really based on the villain too much. His storyline is not the main focus. It's almost like, I guess, World at War in that sense, where he's not really meant to be the main focus. But when he is there, I actually do really like him. I do like his character because he's such a polar opposite to Nick Reyes. I think the best villains usually are the ones that are meant to be polar opposites to the main protagonists. And he's very different because his whole philosophy is that death is no disgrace. He keeps saying that in the campaign, where he thinks you should be willing to die for the cause. And again, like I said before, that's very different than what Nick Reyes' whole idea of death is. So very different perspectives, and I do like that. I like that they do that with this villain. So for that, I'm actually going to put him in B tier, probably even below Kravchenko, I would say. He's a lot better than people give him credit for, I will say. Again, I don't think he's fantastic, but I think he's definitely better than people give him credit for. Next up, we have COD World War II. We have quite a decent amount of characters from this campaign, actually. So starting off with Ronald Daniels. I call him Red sometimes, but he's the main character, main protagonist. This is a solid main protagonist. They did a great job here with the playable character, so I'm going to give him A tier. Probably the top A. Like, I really am happy that these campaigns started to get some really solid playable characters, because like I said before, that's something the older Call of Duties just didn't do a great job with. They never made them that interesting, but these ones are actually good. They're full-on characters, and Daniels is no different. Zussman deserves to be right alongside him, to be honest. Maybe a little bit lower. I'll put him below Yuri, maybe not below Hudson, maybe. I mean, Infinite Warfare World War II back-to-back, I think, have some of the best characters in any campaign ever. So, you know, we'll just keep going. I'll show you what I mean. I mean, you got Pearson here. Pearson's going to go maybe even above Zussman. I don't know. He's great. He's awesome. Turner probably going to be B tier, though. I don't think Turner deserves to be that high on the ranking. Maybe above Kashima. And then we got a yellow Frank. I think his first name was Frank or something like that, but he wasn't that interesting. But he had a lot of good dialogue, so I'll give him that. And then you had Styles probably below him. Colonel Davis, C tier, not the most interesting colonel we've had. Maybe even not that low, maybe like right here or something. That's fine. We have Rousseau. She was a French resistance fighter, probably like low B, no, high B, maybe right above Turner. And then Marcus Howard, probably high C or low, high C. And then we have Vivian, which Vivian's actually a much more interesting character in the zombie storyline, funny enough. But in the campaign, she's okay. Maybe top of C, right below, maybe below Mitchell, but seems okay. So yeah, that's the World War II main characters. But I wanted to go through them kind of fast. But when it comes to Daniels, Pearson, and Zussman, I just really think their back and forths were really well written. I liked how Pearson was such a hard ass on everyone, and obviously Turner was like kind of the main leader in a sense, but Pearson was as well. I don't forget who had higher command, but they kind of both acted as leaders in different ways. And obviously Zussman and Daniels had like the closest friendship there out of anyone. And when Turner died, that was a really emotional scene, but I like that the other characters got to live and got to move on, and they all had their own like role to play in the gameplay as well. Like obviously Zussman was the medic, Pearson highlighted nearby enemies, Turner had the ammo, I believe Styles had like lethal and tactical ammo, and then Frank had the smoke signal flare that calls in like a mortar fire. So that was cool. They also had each of the characters belong to a specific gameplay element. And as for the villains, you have Metz and Heinrich. I mean, I don't know, the World War II campaigns in COD, they just usually don't have that great of villains, because I mean the villain is Nazi Germany. Like, it's a pretty big villain. You don't need a specific person to be like the main one. So I mean, Metz, I'm probably just gonna put him close to where just around here, I guess. Here's fine. Same with him. It doesn't really matter the placement. Like at this point where I'm placing doesn't really matter in some of these tiers. Like C tier has so many characters now that I just fuck it, just throw them in there. But yeah, obviously Metz was the Nazi officer who was the director of the labor camp where they torture and abuse prisoners. That was towards the end of the campaign when obviously Zussman gets taken. And then Heinrich, I believe, was just another Nazi general focusing on destroying the French resistance. That was like his main role. So again, not a great character necessarily, but just kind of exists. And so now we're getting to the modern era of Call of Duty campaigns with Modern Warfare 2019, which of course rebooted the Modern Warfare trilogy with different versions of these characters. So obviously it only made sense to have them be different versions. And here, this version of John Price, Captain Price, whatever you want to call him, I'm going to give him A tier. I'm not going to give him S. I don't think he belongs with the OG Captain Price, but he's definitely still a solid version of Price, and I respect the hell out of him. I think he's obviously much better in the first Modern Warfare game. I don't really like him as much in 2 and 3. I don't think he's as interesting, but I do think the actor's doing a great job. I believe his name's Barry Salone. He's fantastic as Captain Price in this game. I would say they did a great job of recasting for the role. So definitely like him quite a bit, but I don't think he's on the same level as OG Captain Price. Just not at this point. Gaz, however, is better than the OG Gaz. I mean, the OG Gaz, like I said, wasn't that great of a character to begin with. So I would say this version of Gaz is a lot better, and I would put him in B tier, probably right above Kashima. That seems like a good spot for him. Then we have Nikolai from Modern Warfare 2019, which is, I would say, better than the OG Nikolai, actually, but not by a lot. Just by a little. We'll put him over here, I guess, maybe in front of, behind Riley or something like that. But then we have Farah, though. Farah is easily one of the best characters in a modern Call of Duty campaign, and I might even go with S tier, maybe. Yeah, screw it. I'm putting her in S tier above Nora Salter. Honestly, I think she is one of the best campaign characters. She's a part of the Urzikstan Liberation Force, and learning about her character and why she's doing what she's doing, she's obviously trying to basically just free her people, free the people of Urzikstan from Russia was basically trying to occupy them because they believe that it's like a breeding ground for terrorists, Urzikstan, so they're trying to control it to stop terrorist groups from being able to form. And obviously there are terrorist groups there, but Farah's saying like, well, why should my people get in trouble for that? Like, we're not terrorists. Like, obviously not all of them are terrorists, so she's part of that liberation force that's trying to free them and fight back against the Russians there. So I really like that story. I think it's pretty good for her character, and she's definitely one of the best parts of that campaign. We also have her brother Hadir. Now Hadir was originally a good guy. Well, not really, actually. We thought he was, but then we learned that he actually was behind some pretty bad stuff. He was actually responsible for the chlorine gas that was used against the Russian forces, and obviously gets a lot of people killed in the process because he's trying to fight back against the Russians, but in a way that's very like big and gets a lot of innocents killed. So a lot of interesting nuance covered with this campaign. But Hadir, I would say, is a pretty good villain. I don't like that they finish his storyline in the raids for Modern Warfare 2 rather than just continuing it in another campaign, but I would say he definitely deserves to be at least B tier, somewhere in there. So I'll throw him in there. We have Alex as well, which Alex is a really cool character, but they don't really do a lot with him, I would say. He's mainly a big part of Modern Warfare 2019. Obviously, MW2 and 3 doesn't really do a lot, but I'll probably put him, around here. B tier seems fine to me. Laswell, probably going to be lower B tier, but she's pretty cool. She's one of those behind-the-desk characters that does a couple of things in the field, but not a lot. But I definitely like her character. I think she's cool. Then we have some of the villains of this campaign. I guess technically Hadir was a villain, but we have the Butcher and the Wolf. Now, they're both parts of Al-Qatala. I forget how they pronounced it. Their terrorist organization in Urzikstan that will basically just do anything to get peace for their people. So basically, they have similar goals as what Farah does, but they're just much more extreme. They're an extremist group, so they're willing to kill innocents to get what they want. So the Butcher, I would say, as a villain, doesn't really have a lot of depth to him, so I'll just put him somewhere in B tier, C tier, but I would say the Wolf deserves B tier for sure because he has a lot more to him and he's a lot more interesting. And I think in general, they covered that topic quite interestingly in Modern Warfare 2019. Barkov was, though, the leader of the Russian military, well, not the full Russian military, but of the specific group that was tasked to go into Urzikstan and take it over because of what I said before. They believed it was like a breeding ground for terrorists. So I would say Barkov is a pretty good villain, probably on the same tier as of some of the other villains. A lot of villains are in B tier, I've noticed, but he definitely was pretty solid villain. So I'll give him credit there. I'm gonna drop Gator a little bit. I'm gonna probably switch around some of these characters here or there because I don't love the placement of everything, but most of it seems fine. And now we're getting into Black Ops Cold War, which is one of the most interesting campaigns, and the main protagonist, the main playable character, is of course Bell. Now, Bell is a character that I mentioned before. I don't like these silent playable characters. I don't like when they don't have a character to them. There's not much to them, which is basically what they do with Player here. But Bell is very different because of the twist that they do at the end of the game, where Bell was actually originally a Soviet soldier, and they basically just kind of brainwashed him in a sense to not only get information out of him, but also have him just join their side. So I thought that was a really interesting story, to the point where I would say Bell deserves some credit. Like I'm gonna give him kind of maybe somewhere in B tier, to be honest. Like I like that story for Bell. I thought it was really, really interesting. Again, he probably would be higher if they actually still made him more of a character, gave him a voice and everything. But as it was, I like Bell quite a bit. Then you have Russell Adler. Easy S tier, man. This is a very, very easy S tier. I'm gonna put him right there above General Shepard. Definitely one of the best characters that they've added in the past couple COD campaigns. I would say Russell and Farah are definitely like the top 2 best modern Call of Duty campaign characters in terms of the new ones. So yeah, definitely on board with Russell Adler. He is a badass. He's cool. The voice actor is incredible, gives a lot of really good pieces of dialogue. I would say he's much better in Black Ops Cold War than he is in Black Ops 6, but I still do like him in Black Ops 6. I just think he had more to do in Cold War and he had a better role to play. But he just looks so fucking badass, so cool. The fact that he has this scar, but he doesn't tell anybody how it happened, and when he does say it, you don't really believe him. And I don't know, it's just an interesting character that I would love to see a lot more of in the Call of Duty franchise. Then we have Helen Park, and she's cool. I like Park. I don't know how much I like her though. I mean, maybe B tier seems good. I thought she was like fun to talk to. She a lot of dialogue with this character, and you get kind of close with her, and she seems like, yeah, I think no, maybe even higher than. Does she deserve higher than B? You know what? Yeah, she's getting an A. I think she deserves it. I think she does. I'm trying to think of some of the missions that she was in, but there's a couple of solid missions where she does actually do a lot. So I think she deserves A. I think there's a lot of, like I said, a lot of dialogue you can have with her in the safe room, and if you actually utilize that dialogue, you get to hear a lot more about her, learn a lot more about her life. And so I would say because of that, yeah, she deserves A tier. Lazar, unfortunately, is gonna go probably C tier, which is funny to me because they actually gave you a choice between Lazar and Park, which one to save. Who the hell was gonna pick Lazar? I don't know who was gonna do it. Everyone was picking Park. Then we have Lawrence Sims, who actually, it's funny, he was in the army, then he went to the CIA, then he went back to the army in Black Ops 6, and I actually love what they did with him in Black Ops 6, that one mission that he was in. He wasn't really too much of a role, he didn't really have too much of a role to play in Black Ops Cold War, but I'm gonna put him just, yeah, somewhere in C tier. I like that mission in Black Ops 6 with him, so that deserves some credit there. And then, of course, we have Perseus as the main villain in Black Ops Cold War. And he's not really that great of a villain as a villain itself, but the idea of Perseus that was kind of just overlaying the entire campaign is what made him a compelling character, I would say. So I'm going to put him in B tier for that. But obviously the character itself doesn't really do much in the campaign. He's only in it at the very, very end. But his presence was there for sure. So he definitely deserves to be somewhat higher than some of these other characters. I'm actually going to drop some of these down to D because I just realized like this is getting so overstuffed in C tier. And I think some of these lower tier characters here probably could just go in D tier. Like there's really no reason to shove them all in C tier. I don't think they're, yeah, that looks a little bit better. Now we have Vanguard, which is a campaign a lot of people hate. And I've mentioned before, I don't love it, but I do think when you look at it as a game that's just meant to be like war stories essentially for different characters rather than a cohesive storyline, it's actually not that horrible. And I think the characters are decent. Arthur Kingsley here, yeah, he's fine. I'll put him in B tier. I think he's decent. He's part of the British Army. He was in Operation Tonga, which was one of the main missions that you have with him on D-Day itself. So I think Arthur Kingsley is definitely one of the better ones. Paulina, though, is easily the best character in this campaign. I'm probably going to put her up in A tier, actually, which might surprise some people, but I think she'd go even higher than, yeah, maybe right below Zussman. No, below Ghost. No, below Zussman. I think she deserves to be above Ghost. She's really cool. She's obviously a Soviet sniper. She was in the Battle of Stalingrad. She was a part of the invasion when it happened. Well, she was there when it happened, when they invaded Stalingrad. So many cool missions with her, so many cool moments, and I actually really liked learning about her and with her family and everything like that. So out of all the characters in Vanguard, I think she's definitely the standout for sure. Then you have Lucas Riggs. I couldn't give a rat's ass about Lucas, to be honest. Let's just put him down somewhere around here. I just did not really care. Same with Wade Jackson. They didn't really make those characters that interesting. I think Arthur and Paulina were way more interesting, but unfortunately Wade and Lucas just didn't do much for me. And then you have Richard Webb here. I think I could put him in D tier, to be honest, because he was there for like a second for one mission, and they like kind of made you try to care about him, but you just really couldn't. He was close with Arthur, but I just never really latched onto it. I never felt it, even though he was someone you're supposed to kind of care for. And as for the villains, we have Herman Frenzinger and Janik Richter. They're both pretty bad villains. They're just such generic Nazi guys. I don't know. So D tier is probably where they deserve to be. Let me get to Modern Warfare 2 2022. And we have Soap, the new version of Soap, that is. So disappointed in the new version of Soap, man. Compared to the original Soap, he ain't shit. Now, he's not bad. Don't get me wrong. I'm not going to put him that low. But just like, come on, man. Like, you know what I mean? It's just not the same. I'm going to put him, he was definitely better in MW2. Hated his death scene in MW3. Really, really hated that. I'm probably just going to put him right there in B tier. It's just a shame because obviously Soap was going from A tier to B tier. It's a pretty big drop for sure. Ghost, however, I actually like this version of Ghost quite a bit. I might even put him even higher than the original Ghost, which might seem like a crime to do, but they gave him more depth. So that's pretty cool. I mean, I don't know. I would like to see more of this version of Ghost. I thought he was pretty awesome. He had more mystery behind him, and he's more to do. So definitely think he deserves to be a little higher than the OG Ghost. And then we have Alejandro, which I think he deserves pretty high S tier. He was great. He was obviously the leader of he was leader of Los Vaqueros, and obviously they were allied to TF Task Force 1 for 1. And you also had his buddy Rudy, which I'm gonna put his buddy Rudy in C tier because he's not that interesting. But Alejandro is really cool. I really would love to see more of him in probably MW4. I'm assuming they'll probably bring him back. He wasn't in MW3, unfortunately, but originally the MW3's campaign was actually supposed to continue that story from MW2, but then they changed plans. But I don't know. I liked that aspect of like the Mexican cartel and the world of what was going on there and how that related to everything else that was going on. They found an interesting way to relate everything, and Alejandro's role in that was actually really, really cool. But then of course we have Valeria, who was she was a Mexican drug lord of some sort and leader of the Los Alamos cartel. So she was a pretty good villain, actually. Like, again, a villain I would love to see return. I think she definitely has more of a role to play in the future games for sure. I'm gonna put her in B tier, probably right below Admiral Briggs. Probably that seems good to me. And then the villain for MW2 was Hassan. I didn't really like this villain though. I thought he was really, really weak. So I'm probably gonna put him. He was the main villain again, just like Rourke. Like he meant to be the main villain. I think he was kind of a weak villain. So I'm gonna put him top of D tier, unfortunately. Then we got Shepard, the new version of Shepard, and Graves. And unfortunately, just like with Soap, I think this version of Shepard is a lot weaker compared to the OG Shepard. Which, I mean, I guess it was kind of expected, but I don't know. I just didn't like this version. They went for a very different type of Shepard. Like he's not at all the same. His motivations are kind of different, even though he is similar in the terms of him doing like off the book stuff that he's not supposed to be doing. And in this case, he's working with Shadow Company to basically smuggle American weapons to allies in the Middle East and basically aid them in their fight against the Russians. But that leads to some fishy things when the missiles end up getting stolen by Kony Group, which is Makarov's like group that he leads, and he gets kind of tied to that, and there's this whole trial that they do in MW3. So I don't know, he's not a bad character by any means. I just don't think he's nearly as good as Shepard from the original trilogy. So I'm gonna put him in B tier at the very bottom. Seems like a decent place for him. Graves I like a little bit more, although his fake out death was really, really stupid, but I'll put him maybe above Kate Laswell. That seems like a good spot for him. And then we got the brand new version of Makarov, and oh my god, again, just the downgrade is insane here, man. I just, so far, I don't feel anything from this villain. So far, the actor does a great job with it, but so far I don't feel any sort of like tension between this character. Like, yes, they do something big with him in this campaign. It was obviously a repeat of what they did before, but a little bit different. He's the commander of the Kony Group here, leader of the Ultranationalist Party of Russia, just like previous MW trilogy, and his goal is very similar to restore Russia's power and everything like that. It's pretty much the same goal, but in this way, instead of him framing US for a terrorist attack, he frames Urzikstan for it. And I do think that was an interesting change in the story, but I just I don't know, man. I'll put him probably around. He's not awful. He's not an awful villain, but for what he should have been, I did think he was kind of weak, so I'm going to put him in C tier. And lastly, we got Black Ops 6's characters. I don't know what this Ramirez is doing here. I guess I duplicated him on accident, but first of all, we have Case, which I just used this image for Case. Like, I don't know if that's meant to be Case or not. They didn't really show a picture of Case. Case, unfortunately, I don't like as much as Bell. I don't think he was as interesting. They did the same sort of thing as they did with Bell, where they do this character you're playing as. You don't really know who he is. You don't know anything about him, and you learn a little bit. And I do think the stuff that you learn was interesting and intriguing. So for that, I'm gonna put him at the top of the C. But they don't go far enough with it. They don't go far enough. You don't really learn like full things, and unless they revisit this character in the future, then I'm gonna have to say he definitely was a bit disappointing with how they wrap things up. But I definitely liked most of it though, so I think C tier seems good. Troy Marshall was a really cool new character. I'm putting him straight in A tier, to be honest. Like, they did a great job with this character. Definitely one of the more interesting characters, a part of this rogue Black Ops team. Then we have Felix Newman, another pretty interesting character. Again, they did a great job with the characters in Black Ops in Black Ops 6. And we have Savate Dumas, or they call her Sev. She's really cool. I'm putting her probably right next to Troy Marshall in as A tier, which pretty crazy that a lot of these Black Ops 6 characters are getting this high for me, but I really like them. It's why I like the campaign so much. And then last but not least, Jane Harrow. Now, Jane Harrow is actually a pretty damn good villain. Like, I was interested in this character's story. She's a CIA operations specialist, but she was revealed to be the leader of Pantheon later on, because she basically has this whole plan to destroy the CIA's reputation, because they essentially got her family killed, or at least that's what she believed. So there's this whole thing that happens there, or at least they were tied to her parents' assassination. And I thought that was a really interesting storyline for Jane Harrow. I thought it was a really interesting character, really interesting villain. So I might even put her higher than Ghost here. I actually might drop Ghost down there, even though I talked about Ghost before, how iconic he was, but I actually think I like these characters more than him. So that is going to do it for my tier list. That is a completed tier list. Can't believe I have one person in F, and it's legit the player from BO3. But that's how it is, man. That's how it is. So, I mean, yeah, let's just run through this. D tier has a lot of characters that I honestly most of them I just don't care about. Only a couple of them that genuinely bothered me with their writing, like Hassan and Gabriel Rourke, and a couple of the other ones as well, but most of them are just there because I just don't really care. C tier, again, is mostly just a I don't really care list. It's pretty much how that goes. B tier is once you get to the characters that I actually enjoy and I think have good writing. They just don't have that one thing that pushes them a little bit higher. There's something there that pulls them back just a little bit. A tier is the solid characters that are just missing like one minor thing to push them into S tier, but they're all really great characters that deserve the best. And S tier, of course, these are the GOATs of Call of Duty campaigns. And let's see, how many are in here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. 14 of those characters. Love them to death. Such great writing with all of them. So yeah, I think a lot of these characters deserve to be amongst some of the best characters personally that I've ever seen in any sort of fiction. Like Nick Reyes, Menendez, Frank Woods, Captain Price especially. Like those, the top 5 there, including Reznov as well. I'd be really curious to hear what you guys' lists are. You may have to tell me all of them, but tell me your top 5, top 10, top 20. Maybe give me some of your worst characters as well. I would love to hear it. And if you want to complete this tier list yourself, I will put a link in the description to it so you guys can complete the tier list and maybe share it with me on Twitter or something like that. So hopefully you guys enjoyed. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Peace out, everyone. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel as well.